Hello, I'm Dylan.
And I'm Keon.
And this is Inevitable, that podcast that's twice as long as it needs to be, because this week we watched Assignment to the Railway Station.
Written by PJ Hammond.
Directed by Sean O'Riordan and David Foster.
And aired from July 31st to November 8th, 1979.
Yeah, so I guess a quick note on the directing. Wikipedia says this one was just directed by David Foster, but the credits for the episode list both Sean O'Riordan and David Foster. So I'm not sure what's going on there, but
I mean, I would just trust the credits, unless there's some, I'm looking at the Wikipedia article right now, and there's not. I was going to say unless there's some note saying it was Riordan is actually known to have not directed this or something like that, but his name was on the credits anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But no, there's nothing like that. There is mention of the strike that took place that delayed this story.
Yeah. Which is why it took from July to October to air.
Yeah, November, so.
November, sorry.
Even longer.
Yeah, so I really do think that this serial went on twice as long as it needed to. I definitely think that the latter 4 episodes are, I think the final 4 episodes for this form a really, really good, complete story, in my opinion. And I think what brings this serial, I guess, down for me is the first 4 episodes.
I agree with that. Even though I didn't find any of this compelling, I really wish I did, especially after last week and hearing that, Serial 2 was better than 1. I was, ready for, the real Sapphire and Steel experience. But it just dragged so much that by the end of it, when they actually did start getting to some stuff that was interesting, I just was totally uninvested in the story as a whole.
Right. And I think I benefited from watching these pretty spread out, in my opinion. This time, especially because it allowed me, because I think the final 4 episodes were just superior, it allowed me, because I watched these all over different days, I think I went one episode, and then two. It allowed me to kind of separate the first 4 from the second 4, mainly because I actually did unintentionally put a 1-day gap in the middle of there because we were watching Taken this same week. So what ended up happening was that I watched the final 4 a day with a day gap between watching the first 4. So I think in my mind, to me, I did experience it almost as 2 stories. So I can separate out the first 4 from the second 4, and why I think I can say, for me personally, first 4 completely dispensable, brings the story down.
Well, I mean, you at least need the setup from 1.
Yeah, but you can easily weave that into episode 5, because episode 5 of the final 4 episodes is the one with the least going on. You can easily weave that in there and make all 4 of those final episodes very dense and well-paced at the same time, I think.
I guess. I, on the other hand, made the same mistake I made last week. I watched 1, 2, and 3, 1 per day, but then I just had to power through 4 through 8 all at once. And I think that brought some of my enjoyment down. I do think there's good stuff that comes at the end of this story, but again, I just didn't care at that point.
Mm-hmm. Maybe also I think part of the reason, and we talked about this briefly before we started recording, why I did enjoy 5 through 8, is that, and we talked about this actually with Keith on Trust Your Doctor, about how Doctor Who has had every fear on the show. One of my fears is getting caught in barbed wire. So in episode, I think it was 5, maybe 6, when Steel just gets trapped in barbed wire, I was like, yeah, that wasn't a good experience for me, shall we say. This is a very effective story for me, I guess I should say.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I guess we can just dive right into it, and hopefully we'll go over the first 4 pretty quickly because not a lot happens.
Yeah, I think we will, because like you said, not a lot happens. I do have a couple funny notes about questionable things. Obviously, this was all shot on a set, which I think is painfully obvious. The very first time you see the railway platform and it's almost pitch black and it
Yeah.
feels like it's inside a warehouse, and that's because it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we open with Tully. So I guess we should mention there's only really two guest characters this week. I guess again owing to that low budget nature of the show. So we've got Tully, and then later on we'll meet Private Sam Pierce.
Right. So Tully, sort of at the beginning of episode 1, is he arrives at the station. He sort of lights a bunch of lamps, and he starts making a recording and trying to communicate with a ghost. It's not really a secret or a spoiler to mention that here. It's very obvious that he's trying to communicate with a ghost right away.
Yeah, he pulls out his little tape recorder and talks like, "I'm trying to help you. Like, come out, show yourself." So
Right. And that's when he sees a weird apparition on the stairs. And who else would it be but Steel?
yeah, I do think there is some good stuff in this first episode. Of the first four, I think the first episode is the most interesting because you get a lot of this creepy horror vibe where you don't know what the ghosts are up to, you don't know what the ghosts look like. Episode 1 is very much just Sapphire, Steel, and Tully wandering through this creepy house with weird stuff happening to them.
Right. So since Steel is here, we know that, like, okay, yeah, this guy isn't just imagining things. There actually is a supernatural disturbance about.
And then we get the title sequence, which I think is different than last week because they added silver to the title sequence.
No, it's in the original. It's in
Was it?
assignment 1 as well. Yeah.
For some reason,
always-
I didn't remember it being there in assignment 1. I don't know why that is.
Yeah. So it's Sapphire, Silver, and Steel.
SSS. Wait a
Yeah,
minute.
no.
Hang on a minute.
Yeah, and Silver is a pretty prominent character later in the show.
Next week, in fact, I think, is Silver's first appearance from what I understand.
Yeah, I wonder if Silver was was part of a 3-man team with, like, Sapphire, Silver, and Steel, like they say in the intro, but was maybe left that team or was outed for some reason, or ousted rather. I wonder because that's how it's done in the intro, is that it's Sapphire, Silver, and Steel as a unit.
I'm very
whatever.
curious to know what Silver's powers are going to be and how they're going to play into this theory that I had last week where all the powers are stronger together kind of thing.
Which this episode doesn't really expand on.
No, and we don't actually really see Sapphire and Steel use their powers very much. Sapphire holds time later on briefly, and then I think that's like pretty much it, actually.
Yeah, that's it.
Besides the fact that Steel mentions that he's not qualified to do a spot check.
Yeah. So speaking of Sapphire, Sapphire is actually on the railway platform checking it out.
Yeah, so there's a waiting room, and then there's the platform. So at first, I'm going to come clean here. I didn't actually realize this was a railway platform for the entire first episode, because again, it looks like it's inside, and I forgot that the whole thing was filmed on it. This whole show was filmed on a set. So I was trying to imagine some building where there's like an inside platform, and it just like wasn't working in my head until I realized it was a railway platform.
Well, I mean, I knew it was a railway platform, but I couldn't see it as anything other than like a subway platform because of the, how dark it is and how much it just looks like it's just this isolated thing in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, and then like this, I couldn't reconcile the waiting room with the fact that I didn't realize it was a railway platform. It's like, why is there a waiting room?
Yeah, a lot of how this is done, I actually do like how sort of, I guess, bleak and isolated everything looks. It reminds me of, weirdly enough, 90s cartoons. So shows like, Cat Dog, Rocko's Modern Life, to me have always had like this very isolated, lonely sort of feeling to them, where the characters are just in like this suburban hell world that like is just inescapable.
Interesting comparison, but I can see it.
Yeah.
Well, so over the course of this first episode, we find out that Sapphire has or notices that there's a specific spot in the room that's warmer than the rest and smells like summer, and she notices herself change into summer clothes when she walks through that spot. Steel doesn't see this change that she claims is there, but he believes her that there's this spot in the middle of the room basically that's summer, while the rest of it is, I think it's winter or maybe spring, but I think it's winter.
Yeah, I think they say it's winter. Luckily for them, they're in a part of the world that actually has differences between the seasons.
I mean, given the climate change we've experienced over the past year, I mean, it's been a week of solid rain, which is apparently record rainfall for where we are. So I think we have differences in seasons now.
Maybe. Yeah, and I mean, last year, this is totally irrelevant to Sapphire and Steel now, but like last year, it rained like way longer than it normally does, or way further into the year than like the rain normally lasts.
I think that's going to be the new norm. There's a moment in here where, as a physicist, I like physically cringed because they were talking about some quantity that they were measuring. It was like mass times acceleration times distance divided by time. And I was like, what is this nonsense measurement? And I was like trying to figure out the units in my head, and like mass times acceleration is almost force. Then you multiply by distance and divide by time. So the units are like kilograms times meters cubed divided by seconds cubed. And I'm like, what is this?
Just goes to show you how advanced Sapphire and Steel are. Like, we can't even grasp.
You know what? Yeah, just a head canon. I'll accept that head canon.
You're welcome, PJ Hammond.
I honestly, my favorite part of this podcast so far has been seeing how PJ Hammond is just like, I don't know, it doesn't make sense, and that's fine, and I don't even know any explanation for it, and you're just gonna have to accept that. Like, he just does not care. And I think that's hilarious.
To be honest, that's actually something I wanted to bring up at the end here, but since we're talking about it, I actually don't feel that this show leaves you hanging with the explanations nearly as much as I thought it would. I thought it would just throw you in and like absolutely nothing would be explained, but they actually do at certain points sit you down and be like, and say like, here's what's going on, here's what's happening. And a lot of that is very clear to me, more clear than a lot of shows I've watched, I think.
I think they do explain the plots of the episodes very clearly. I think they do leave a lot of things regarding the nature of the plot of the episode up in the air. And this episode / serial, we talk a lot about these things as if they're ghosts. And in Lost Serial, Steel was like the refractions, the time refractions, basically. And in this episode, they just refer to them as ghosts. And then there's the creeping darkness, which again, like, we get a very clear explanation as to how they defeat the darkness, but we don't know what the darkness is. You know,
right?
We don't know where the darkness comes from either, or how it has these powers. We just know that it does.
Sure, I guess. I mean, I guess I wasn't really thinking about that while watching it.
I wasn't either.
But sure, yeah.
Episode 1 ends with Sapphire's on the platform. Steel knows something's wrong. He's like, Sapphire, you need to get off the platform, and that's the cliffhanger.
Yeah, I'm really not liking, I'll just say this now, and so as not to harp on it any longer, I'm really not liking the cliffhangers / the endings of the episodes, because they just end like, it's almost like how Children of the Stones did it, where it's just like 25 minutes, just cut it off. Wherever we are, just cut it off.
Some of them are very good, which is why I think the latter 4 episodes of this story are better than the first 4, because the cliffhangers there are like actually cliffhangers. Like, one of them is that Sapphire's been possessed by an alien creature. Like, that makes sense as a cliffhanger. One of them is that Steel is trapped in barbed wire and Sapphire is in a coma. Like, those are very logical places to be cliffhangers, but I do agree with you. Like, this one is just like, all right, let's end the episode. Sapphire, you got to get off the platform. But I think there's a mix. Like, I don't think every cliffhanger is like this.
Yeah, definitely. So episode 2 begins where episode 1 left off. Every episode, I've realized, is going to do this, where we just go back a little bit. So even more incentive for us to not cram them all together, I guess.
Yeah.
But there's like a band approaching, like a marching band type thing. I think we only hear them at this point, but yeah.
Yeah, because we see every so often the platform will have flowers on it, which is like the summer spot encroaching on the platform, and so the platform is reverting back to its summer look, which is with all the flowers that are alive.
Right.
In this episode again, I think we get a couple cool, or good, I should say, things. There's I think a very creepy shot, because the first time we meet Private Pierce, he has kind of a PTSD induced flashback to the war, which I think is done very well, because we get like actual shots of very convincing shots of a war, and then it ends with it's just a shot of a hand, a bloodied hand with blood dripping off the hand.
Yeah.
But again, that's kind of where the good stuff for episode 2 ends, because they kind of walk around for a bit, and then we get this glorious shot with Steel as a pilot. And
well, okay, so before that happens, they actually convene with Tully and kind of discuss what's going on, and he tells them that he's been like investigating the ghosts and they need to just piss off because it's his job. And Steele's like, I don't think you understand, Tully. I don't think you understand the scope of what's going on here.
Yeah, there's actually a very funny line here where Tully's like, I've been studying it for 11 months, like, this is a very interesting ghost. And Steele goes, yes, it is a very interesting ghost. I'm here to remove it. And Tully's like, wait, what?
Yeah, I am liking, to be honest, I'm not totally, I don't think Sapphire and Steel themselves are very strong characters. I know that's probably controversial, but I do enjoy like how Steel, I don't even know how to, well, I don't even know how to phrase this, but I'm just enjoying how like blunt, I guess, and no nonsense Steel is.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you there. I do enjoy David McCallum and Joanna Lumley. Like, I think that they are putting their all into these roles. I don't think they've necessarily been given a lot to work with, so I feel like a lot of it is up to them, and I do enjoy watching them. I do think they're the most enjoyable part of the show so far for me.
I think my concern so far is that Sapphire and Steel almost feel like the same character. Steel's a lot more cold-hearted for sure, but they both have this like cryptic thing. They both have this like, we know what's going on and you don't, and we're not going to tell you thing. They just, yeah.
Sapphire is definitely, I think, the more open, comforting one. Looking back at like Assignment 1, where she was the one comforting the children, and in this one she's the one who has to talk to Tully, because whenever Tully talks with Steel, he just basically smacks down his life work. But I think I agree. At the moment, they are very similar.
Which, that could just be maybe they're closer element-wise to each other. Sapphire, Silver, and Steel. So maybe the farther they are away, the more different they would be. Like Lead was pretty different.
Possibly.
I don't know. I don't know if there's like a fake. I don't know if there's like a fictional Sapphire and Steel periodic table that has Sapphire and Steel on it. I'm guessing not, since PJ Hammond is just like, yeah, I don't know, guys. Like,
I mean, also like Sapphire being an element, like, yes, PJ Hammond is really playing fast and loose with this.
And Jet.
So that's the thing, is either Jet or Diamond you can get away with by saying that it's just like a state of matter of carbon. But having them both there undermines that argument, because they're both there.
Well, okay, so speaking of jets, the whole room that Steel's in turns into a plane.
This is the most hilariously realized special effect this week, which I know we put that segment at the end last week, but I think I'm going to turn it into a middle of the episode thing, like we did for the one of the Blake 7 segments we did like that. This is my hilariously achieved special effect of the week. / most obvious low budget cost saving measure of the week.
All right. Well, why don't you explain what they do then?
Well, they just tilt the camera. Or rotate
Right.
the camera, as you say.
Right, because the plane is supposed to be crashing, so in order to simulate the like nosedive action of it, that's what they do.
It's okay. Here's the thing: is that when if you watch the scene before the rotation and after the rotation in isolation, it actually doesn't look too bad. Like the scene where he's crashing and it's rotated, you can kind of if you squint your eyes a little bit, you can kind of imagine it is a plane going down. But watching the rotation in the middle, which is what they do, you actually see it rotate. Watching the rotation in the middle is why the illusion kind of breaks down for me.
Yeah, it's definitely a noticeable thing nowadays. So, okay, if we're going to do them in the middle of the episode, we already passed mine. My favorite sort of low budget trick, and I think we should also mention that, like, this section we can also, I think, dedicate to, like, ones that actually work or the ones that
Yeah,
are like,
yeah,
wow,
yeah,
that's a
yeah.
very clever use of low budget.
Of
So
course.
as not to disparage the show too much. But this one's not that.
Oh,
This this is so I like in episode one that it's Sapphire and Steel are investigating the station as a whole, and they're on one of the floors with a bunch of sort of rooms in a hallway, and Sapphire goes like, "There's two more floors like this or something like that," which is like just a way for them to have the station be large but also use the same set repeatedly, which is pretty clever, I guess.
that one kind of worked out.
Yeah. It's never actually like fully used though later on in the episode because they don't actually go like, and now we're on the first floor of the station or whatever. You just kind of all I think you do understand at the end how all this works together and sort of the layout of the station. Surprisingly enough,
Is coherent.
yeah,
Yeah, gonna have to agree with you there. This is when
so
my notes start to get a little more sparse because I'm like, I don't need to write down. They move from room to room like every single sentence.
well, okay, so I think we actually skipped this in episode 2, unless it's in episode 3. Tully actually brings in his recording for Sapphire and Steel to listen to, and he plays it back, and there's something that he didn't hear on the recording while he was making it. And it's a bunch of guys trapped in a submarine.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that was in episode 2. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I'm just looking through my notes to see, and I don't. I think it was episode 2 because then episode 3 ends with the cliffhanger that the submarine guys are also ghosts,
Right.
with another low budget special effect, which we'll get to. But we did forget to mention in episode 1, which I'm only bringing up now because it's important in so much as that they figure out the nature of the ghost because of it. So there's a bunch of 11s written on a window in episode 1, and Sapphire and Steel are kind of confused. And in episode 3, they figure out, and I don't exactly remember how, but I think Private Pierce tells them they figure out it's the 11th hour, the 11th day of the 11th month, which is why they've got the 3 11s on the wall, and they kind of figure out that's I think the 11th of November was Armistice Day, wasn't it? World War I.
I don't know. They actually say it in the episode, but I don't know.
I'm pretty sure it was Armistice Day.
I'll put it in the show notes. It was something
it's
important.
Veterans Day in the U.S.
It was something that would have made Pierce not die if he hadn't been caught in like a freak accident. Essentially,
Oh, yeah. The 11th of November is typically when the end of World War I is observed. It's called Armistice Day in New Zealand, France, Belgium, and Serbia, and Remembrance Day in the UK and Commonwealth, and Veterans Day in the US.
No, I didn't actually know that was what Veterans Day was for, to be honest. But
Well, now you know.
yeah, I thought it was just for veterans.
I mean, it is kind of.
Yeah, just another day off to me.
So Steele decides to have Tully sing. So I'm already noticing a pattern here with music in this show.
Right. And not being free to sing what you want. You know, the kids last week couldn't sing the nursery rhymes they wanted, and this week Tully is being forced into singing a marching band song.
It's an old war song, so I looked it up actually after I watched this episode. It's a march. It's called "Pack Up Your Troubles." It was written in 1915 by Felix Powell, with lyrics by George Henry Powell. So George and Felix are brothers. Apparently, it's like a very well-known war song from World War One. So it is period accurate to where Private Pierce is from, allegedly, or at least from where the 11-11-11 is from. But yeah, so that's what he sings. It's interesting. The Wikipedia page has like an in film for this song and like lists all the films it's in, but it doesn't list Sapphire and Steel, surprisingly.
Huh.
Even though it does mention like a TV show here, an episode of The Waltons. So it doesn't mention Sapphire and Steel, which is interesting.
Yeah, I guess maybe they don't know.
We could add it. We could be
I guess.
heroes just for one day.
Just for once in our lives, once on the podcast.
So the reason why Steele is having Tully sing is because he thinks it'll bring Private Pierce back, and it kind of does, but it also brings with them hailfire of bullets, so they have to duck. And I thought Tully was dead for a second here. I thought Tully got shot and was dead, but he's not. He's not.
Do you think any characters are going to die on Sapphire and Steel?
Tully died.
Oh, did he? I thought. Oh, I didn't understand the ending. To be perfectly honest, I know I went on about like, yeah, I think this is perfectly clear, but at the end, like, and plus I was totally checked out. I'll just admit that.
It's okay. I'll explain the ending when we get there.
Yeah, maybe I should also just say that like at this point I actually haven't been awake for over 24 hours because I did sleep for like half an hour, but
That's basically a nap.
Yeah, I've been staying awake most days for like a very long amount of time and been working 15 to 18 hour days every day and barely sleeping. So
Great.
Not a great context to watch Sapphire and Steel in. That's actually, and I was actually thinking about this. This is totally a tangent now, but like that's actually like some people that's normal, like just work 7 days a week and 18 hours a day.
Well, it's normal for you now.
Yeah, I guess it is. Yeah, because as soon as we finish this, I have to do some more work. So
Great. Yeah, so I don't actually know where episode 3 ends and episode 4 ends, because my notes are kind of muddled on these two episodes, and then I just get to the seance, which I know is episode 5. So
yeah, well, episode 4, at the end of episode 4, somewhere along the line, I guess, because I have it in my notes here, Tully sides with the soldier. He sides with Pierce because he says, not directly, but he says something along the lines of like, yeah, Sapphire and Steel are out to get you, but I'm on your side or something.
yeah, he's trying to go back to the helping thing that he's been trying to do since the episode started. Started.
Yeah, so I remember how episode 3 ends. It's when it's Sapphire and Tully pass out, and Steel like prefers a like piece of cloth to them or something, and it like turns into like a rainbow like Sixth Doctor-esque like thing.
Yeah, see, I've got that here. Is that Sylvester McCoy's jumper? Then I guess I have really little notes for episode 4. I've only got 3. Because I go straight to the cliffhanger, which is when they're on the submarine.
Yeah, well, they have the seance, and
the seance is episode 5. That's what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. The seance is episode 5.
No, it starts in 4 but continues into 5. I think.
No. They decide to hold the seance at the end of 4.
No.
I'm looking at the plot summaries on the website I found.
Yeah, maybe we should link that site. It's kind of like so when we watched Star Cops, we had access to that Anorak Zone site, which like actually gave some pretty insightful deets. And Dylan just found a Sapphire and Steel resource, I guess.
Okay, so it looks okay. So what happens is episode 3 ends with the submarine. So episode 3 ends with the submarine. So this is the nice special effect. This is another low budget special effect, but this one I think kind of works. we see three submariners, I guess what submariners or people who man submarines are called, who are kind of huddled in the corner and they're suffocating, and the lights go blue and they're like, please help us, we can't breathe. And Steel's like, what? And then he starts suffocating too, and Sapphire's suffocating as well. Then we get episode 4, and in episode 4, they realize that these are the submariners that they heard on Tully's tape, and they're probably also ghosts. Steel manages to break free, and then they decide to. Tully's like, we should hold a seance because I held a seance before and it worked. And then Steel's like, okay, let's do that. And then the episode ends with the seance beginning and Sapphire getting possessed. And then we get episode 5 where Sapphire is possessed. And this is when, in my opinion, it starts to get really good.
Yeah, this is where, in my opinion, it started to get like just slightly better. Still not good.
So we find out that Sapphire has been possessed by a school teacher, and she reveals that she was the teacher of Private Pierce.
Right.
And so Steel wants to get Sapphire back because he thinks all of a sudden that this is a bad idea. Obviously. And they're not able to get Sapphire back immediately. She kind of passes out and for a while, and they drag her away, and the table, like chairs start to disappear from the table, which I think again was also very well done.
Yeah, okay, so we don't actually get Pierce's backstory via the teacher, but we get hints towards it, and we get bits and pieces of it. And there's actually no point in this serial where we're actually sat down and told, like, here's who Pierce is and stuff like that, but we just have to piece it together. Which is, so the school teacher, like, this is my, I guess, interpretation of it, but I think it's pretty clear. He was like in a, relationship, or he was like involved with his school teacher.
Yeah,
that's actually it. Like, that's actually it. That's actually just it. But he died 11 minutes before the 11th, whatever it was, the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. So he died right before
the war ended.
Right.
Yeah, so that's actually what I've got, as well, as that he was in love with the school teacher and he wanted to get home to her, and he died and wasn't able to. Throughout, I think, episodes 4 through 7, we'll also keep seeing this scene play out where this guy comes in and he asks, I guess it's kind of like he's going into like the pub almost, and is asking because he needs to fly one more mission before he can go home, which reminded me a lot of like Catch-22. He has to fly one more mission to go home, but nobody wants him on their mission. He goes to these people who he knows are short people, and nobody wants him on the mission for him to be able to go home early, I guess.
Right, because we didn't actually mention it, but Pierce's goal actually has been to amass like people who died as a result of war or like tragic deaths like he did, and to come back to life using the power of like this ominous darkness that's like slowly encroaching and taking over the station.
Right.
So now, having just said all that in one fell swoop, I kind of take back the like, yeah, this is pretty straightforward, clear stuff.
Redacted. So Sapphire is kind of comatose, and Steel is like, I'm gonna go see if I can talk to Pierce to see if we can get Sapphire back. Like, you stay here and talk with Sapphire, because Tully's like, I found that talking to people in comas is very helpful. I'm like, but for whom? And so Tully's talking to Sapphire, and Steel goes to meet Pierce and then gets trapped in barbed wire. and that's the cliffhanger to, I don't know if it's episode 5 or 6 now.
5, I think we're still on, because I don't have any notes for 6.
I want to say it's the 8. End. I want to say that's the cliffhanger to 6, and I want to say the cliffhanger to 5 is the guy asking for another mission. I think the cliffhanger to 5 was really lame. Because the cliffhanger to 7 is that they've moved forward 12 days, I want to say. So, pretty sure the barbed wire is the cliffhanger to 6. That's the other thing about the fact that this is so long is that all the episodes kind of blend together.
Yeah, I'm going to try and take better notes than what I did, and I'm also going to try not watch these at 3 a.m. But
I have pretty copious notes, but again, I think this plays into what you were saying, where the cliffhangers are many times just like, okay, we need to end the episode, and because of that, I don't think I clearly delineated where the cliffhangers were because it kind of just goes straight into the next episode.
Right.
But I do know, I am fairly confident that the cliffhanger to 6 is that Steel is wrapped up in barbed wire and Sapphire is comatose on the floor. Or on a bench. Tully lifts her onto a bench. And she's like sitting on the bench. And then in episode 7, Tully sees Tully again sees the pilot who's looking for one more mission to fly, basically. And so Pierce basically taunts Steel. He's like, oh, you wanted me to talk? Well, I sat and I've talked, and now I'm going to go do what I was going to do. And Steel escapes the... So basically, Steel escapes the barbed wire, and Sapphire wakes up, and it's revealed that the two of them were actually asleep, or maybe weren't asleep, and are now just back to normal, just magically. I wasn't actually super clear on this, because they've also jumped ahead 12 days now.
Yeah, so later on, they talk to Tully, and he says that he made a deal with the darkness and that it put him to sleep in order to allow him to leave. And Sapphire's response to that is like, that doesn't make any sense. If it wanted you gone, why would it put you to sleep? So from that, I kind of got that it put them to sleep as well. And just put all of them to sleep.
I think that's what happened, because when Tully sees the pilot, he starts running away, and he runs into Pierce, and he's like, please just let me leave. I just want to go. Like, I'll leave you alone. And Pierce is like, you want to leave? You can leave. And he makes the deal. And so they move forward. In episode 7, it's revealed they've moved forward 12 days.
Yeah, they find this out by examining dust.
Also by examining Tully's now moldy sandwich.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I was a bit fed up with the episode at this point. I was just so bored by it. And I was like, are we seriously examining dust in episode 7 of 8? Like, really?
There's this really funny moment where they pull out the sandwich and they're like, look at this. And Steel looks at it. He's like, yes. And he just chucks it on the table. But when it hits the table, it sounds like it's a brick hitting the table and not a sandwich made of bread. Like, it makes a very loud, distinct, metallic dinging sound.
It's been 11 days. You don't want to eat that anymore.
So they hold the seance again.
Yeah.
Because Steel wants to make a deal with the darkness. Steel has apparently figured out what's going on here. And Steel decides to rehold the seance, and Sapphire makes contact with the darkness. And Steel... Okay, this is where I think Sapphire and Steel gets some of its reputation for being confusing, because Steel makes the deal with the darkness, but we don't actually see him make the deal with the darkness. He just then explains it to Sapphire in the next scene, when he's explaining what he wants Sapphire to do, because Sapphire's like, what's going on? And Steel's like, so I made a deal. And we don't even get the full details of the deal till episode 8, but episode 7 ends with the darkness arriving and Sapphire's eyes go black, which I also think is a really well-realized effect, and is really creepy, actually.
Yeah, it is.
And we see a line of all the ghosts out on the platform, and that's how episode 7 ends, which is, again, very creepy because Sapphire is possessed. Episode 8 begins with Sapphire talking with Steel as the darkness, and then Steel... the darkness leaves Sapphire, and Steel's like, okay, I made a deal with it. And Sapphire's like, well, what's the deal? And Steel's like, don't worry about it. Just know that we're going back for 12 days now, and what I need you to do is to hold us on day 11.
Right. They take Tully with them.
Well, I have to. And also, Steele gives Tully a very like succinct explanation of what they're gonna like, why they're doing this, because he's like, so if you're going down an elevator and you think there's someone in the lobby who's waiting for you, and you don't trust, what do? You get off one floor above and you walk the rest of the way down, right? That's what we're doing. And I was like, I see.
All right.
So Sapphire holds them on day 11, and they go out onto the platform, and the darkness is kind of upset that they stopped on day 11, but the reason why Steele wanted to stop on day 11 is because he wanted the deal to be on his terms. And this is basically when he reveals to the darkness that well, first off, he talks with Pierce, and he tells Pierce how the darkness is just using him, that Pierce will never get to be able to live again, and that he's also 60 years too late to see his love. And also, he tells Pierce that he's just going to keep reliving his trauma, basically, his war trauma / death. He's going to keep reliving that for the next 100 years, basically, while the darkness just keeps him there and tortures him.
Right. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, Pierce basically says, well, I'd rather just go back and die than do that. And this is another reason why Steele wanted them to hold on day 11, is because he wanted to talk to Pierce without the darkness knowing. So Steele's like, well, I can make it so that you can go back if you let us do what we need to do. And Pierce is like, okay, so Pierce backs off, basically.
Yeah.
And this is where we get what I think is like a really, really dark ending, because then Steele reveals to Sapphire that he agreed to trade Tully for all the ghosts. Basically, and he tells the darkness, he's like, we know, this is another weird Sapphire and Steel power that I guess we're just learning about, but Steele's like, we know Tully's going to die in 5 years. It's a matter of fact. He dies in 5 years from now.
Yeah, they do that earlier. They actually set that up way earlier in the story. I don't remember which episode, but like they set up that they know when Tully's going to die much earlier.
Yeah, I must have missed that.
Yeah.
So Steele offers, and the darkness accepts, Tully, a man who will die in 5 years, I guess, to just be the darkness's plaything for 5 years until he dies, if the darkness will let all the ghosts go. And it agrees, and Tully just vanishes, and Sapphire and Steel just leave. It's that they trade Tully for a bunch of dead people.
Yeah, so I don't know. I was kind of checked out at this point, and I thought like he was already dead, and they were like wrong about their age or their like death prediction thing. Or I don't know. I didn't really. Maybe I just had that idea in my head from the beginning that like Tully was actually the one who was dead.
I definitely think they trade the very much still alive Tully in exchange for all these ghosts going away.
Yeah, guess so.
Which is, yeah, wow.
Yeah, they're there to accomplish the job no matter what. Kind of paints the last episode in a different light. Perhaps if they had to sacrifice the two kids, maybe they would have.
Yeah, it really does paint that in a different light. I mean, there was kind of that implication that Steele seemed at many points willing to sacrifice what's her name, little girl, in order to make this stop.
Yeah.
I think this is a little bit too where the differences between Steel and Sapphire, well, it's weird saying it in that order, come into play. Because Steel is very much unfazed by this course of action, whereas Sapphire is like adamantly against it. But Steel says he's already made the deal and they have to go through with it. So Steel, again, being very kind of callous, and Sapphire being less so.
Yeah.
And that's the end of the serial.
Yeah. I actually think the first one, I know apparently public opinion is that 2 is better than 1, but I actually think Assignment 1 was more enjoyable than this.
I think Assignment 1 overall was more enjoyable. Again, I still think the final 4 parts of this make a very enjoyable story, in my opinion. If you just because there is a little bit of wandering around in episode 5 and 6, and you can compress that and introduce the seance in episode 5. And I think it would actually make like a pretty good story. Because you don't know what's going on, and they hold a seance, and then it's all the stuff with the submariners, and Private Pierce and the pilot. So
No, but even then, I would say it still would probably be pretty bad, or at least I wouldn't enjoy it. I didn't really care for any of the characters, including Sapphire and Steel. Tully and Pierce are just whatever to me. There were a lot of, I feel like, almost forced emotions at the end, with like Tully almost breaking down in tears multiple times.
well, he does break down in tears the one time, and he apologizes for making the deal that allowed him to leave if he left Sapphire and Steel behind, and he says he was scared, and that's why he took the deal, because he was scared and he didn't know what to do, and he just wanted to leave.
Yeah, but all of that is so unearned. Even the stuff with Pierce is like so unearned, in my opinion. Like, I don't know how like to improve that, or why that's the case, but I don't know. I just don't know.
I mean, that's fair. I mean, I disagree. Again, I do think that part of the reason why this was maybe effective for me was because, again, like one of my biggest fears is the being stuck in the barbed wire. So just seeing that image on screen was very effective for me.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, I don't have anything really else.
Yeah, I don't have much either, actually. I think I talked about what I wanted to talk about during the episode. I do.
So, yeah, do you want?
I was just going to say, I do
ahead.
think this suffers from the same problem that Doctor Who did, which is that it's in many ways too many episodes. Like I can clearly see that in both assignment 1 and 2, that it's too many episodes for the story they're trying to tell. They could have very easily done 3 assignments in this first season if they chopped this one into 2 4-episode ones and did something different with the first 4 episodes.
Yeah, and I'm curious to know, like, were they mandated to have this be 8 parts and the other one be 6 parts? Like, what kind of went on behind the scenes there to where it resulted in these 2 stories that obviously feel both really drawn out?
Yeah, no, I'd be curious to know if PJ Hammond was like, no, this has to be 8 episodes, or if that was just, he was just writing and writing and writing. He's like, yeah, it's just gonna be 8 episodes. This is the longest story of Sapphire and Steel.
Yeah, thank God.
So
we're over the hill.
thankfully it won't be this long again, and we do get more like 4-part episodes moving forward.
Yeah. I don't know. So far, I'm not totally enamored with this show. I actually think it's, to use a phrase we've used before on the, at least on one of our podcasts or the other, on the bad side of mediocre. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I have a strong opinion either way yet, because there have been things that I've enjoyed and things that I've found really boring, and I don't know where overall I'd put it yet.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it's only 6 stories, so we'll be done within the month. So, anyway, should we do Britain's 10 actors?
Yeah, go ahead, because I didn't look up any this week.
Okay, well, so we've got the 2 major guest stars. So we got Gerald James as George Tully, whose biggest thing was actually he was in The Man with the Golden Gun, which is the James Bond movie, Roger Moore, 1974. He was also in a TV miniseries of The Invisible Man, and then he was in nothing really that I recognize beyond that. Actually, he's the actor who's in like the least stuff that I recognize, but he's been acting a long time. His earliest credit is 1952.
Dang.
And he acted all the way up until 2001, actually, was his most recent role.
Wow, 50-year career there.
So he's, long career. In comparison, like Tom Kelly, who plays Sam Pierce, was in Blake 7, actually. In Spacefall, he played Nova.
Right, and if you remember, Nova was actually one of the characters who was supposed to be part of the Seven.
And alas, was not. He also was in The Face of Evil, The Sunmakers, and The Invasion of Time. So he was in 3 different Doctor Who serials, shall we say. Mm-hmm. And then a bunch of stuff I again don't recognize, although also he was in The Bill, which I think we've mentioned before on our podcasts.
Yeah.
David Woodcock, who plays the Submariner, or the first Submariner he's credited as, and the only one who I could find on IMDb anyway. Nothing really of note. Coronation Street, Emmerdale, and that's really it. Actually, his acting career is not that big. And then David Cann, who plays the pilot, who was actually in the 2012 Les Mis movie.
Oh, wow.
Weirdly enough. But was also
That's really weird.
Also in Blake 7, actually as an uncredited guard or technician in Star 1.
Huh.
He was also in The Tomorrow People and The Bill as well. So there we go. That's Britain's 10 actors for the week. And EastEnders, of course. Forgot. You can never forget EastEnders and Doctors, which again is another show we've mentioned quite a bit. So.
Yeah, nice. So did you have any weird costumes this week?
Sapphire gets yet another outfit. Her summer outfit. I don't think it was particularly weird except for the flower hat, which was just the most 70s thing I've ever seen.
Was Sapphire's normal costume in this different from what it was in Assignment 1? Or is that just me not remembering?
The same. I want to say it was the same.
Yeah. I have a note. Sapphire's in a bathrobe again. But I guess it was the same one. And, and actually, now having watched a little more and paid a little more attention, it actually doesn't look like a bathrobe, like really at all, but whatever.
Oops.
Yeah, I mean, that's all I had, just in general.
Yeah, and I don't really have... I have one quote, actually, which I thought was funny. It was Steele in episode 3, I want to say, where he goes, "I've had enough of ghosts waging war on us. It's time to fight back." And then they don't really do anything about it for another episode. I do want to mention something, actually, that I just remembered that I thought was very interesting. And I don't know how much this gets developed, but I think it was when Sapphire's in the coma or she's knocked out, and Steele's trying to find out, because at some point, we totally forgot to mention this, like, there's a fake Sapphire.
Oh, yeah, we did completely gloss over that. And
Steele is trying to see if it's the real Sapphire or not, and he says something like, "If you're the woman I've come to know, if you're the woman who I've come to love." And I'm like, is there, like, potentially something more between Sapphire and Steele that we haven't really seen before?
Seems to be the case.
Because that line was, and that was like the most emotion, I guess we should say, we've seen from Steele, or empathy that we've seen from Steele towards anyone, admitting that he loves. Yeah, if you're the Sapphire I know and have grown to love, that's the exact quote. Mm-hmm. And I just thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, we'll have to see where that goes, if anywhere.
It may not go anywhere, but yeah, I agree. I'm curious to see where it goes. And with that, I am officially out of things to say about this. So if you would like to email us, you can reach us at thedoctor@decorative.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters, your thoughts on Sapphire and Steel, Assignment 2. You can find us on YouTube at Decorative Vegetable. Find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify, all at Inevitable, a classic sci-fi podcast. Be sure to leave a rating if you like the show.
Check us out on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor, like us on Facebook. Also check us out on Twitter at TYD Podcast and follow us on Twitter. And next time we're going to be watching Assignment 3, aka The Creature's Revenge. But until then, the end.